hey, Alex, do you want to hear about, like, the new fandom drama? I'm instantly 10,000 years old, but I'm sure, why not?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to House of Bards. It's the best co-host. Not that Maxie
Yay!
sucks. It's
Beth is
Beth.
back.
It's Beth. It's Beth. I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah.
Not that Maxie sucks. I really appreciate her. I don't feel betrayed. Despite joking about it multiple times in it's like in private, but I don't feel betrayed. It's fine.
Thankfully, Beth got back to me about being able to do an episode like this soon after we did that episode, before I pushed the QCon episode live, which meant that I could edit out the bit in, like, the sign-off where I talk about, oh, we're probably not going to have Beth for a while. And it's like, oh, okay, well, no, apparently we are.
Actually, we are, yeah.
So this episode, we've already tried to record this episode once, haven't we?
Yeah. And it didn't quite go to plan just due to technological issues. We thought, okay, maybe I can do this on my phone through Discord, and my phone won't let me make a call and record the call at the same time. So that's been an issue. I have needed a computer. Luckily, I seem to be okay for now, but I do genuinely think it's the CPU that Skype takes up.
Yeah,
which is making this episode really risky.
Yeah, we're. I feel like that's your regular update on Beth's technical problems, and beyond that point, I said last episode that we're going to stop making excuses, so we should probably just go.
No, yeah.
So,
you tell us how this topic came into our purview, Alex, because it was requested.
Beth, you and I, we are both very fond of our Panamanian friend, Lysmith.
Yes.
Who goes by Square Mom Best Mom on Tumblr.
Yes.
I, in fact, am so fond of the aforesaid that he is one of my chat mods on Twitch. And 2 episodes ago, he drew some fan art for us.
Yes.
Which those of you who've seen last episode will know I used in that stupid joke that is at the beginning of that episode. And we thought, oh well, try and recognise good fan input.
Yes.
So at one point in my Twitch chat, Lysmith said that he was planning I can't remember what system he said he was going to do it in, like Pathfinder maybe or something. But he was planning a game that was Pokemon, but set in a diesel punk near future with heavy anarcho-socialist and queer themes.
I love that. That sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds rad to me.
That game is all of my aesthetics, apparently.
But I already did a lot of talking last episode when you weren't here about, like, cool game concepts that are unusual. So instead, we're going to talk about the anxiety that Lysmith was having about it, and we're going to talk about politics.
Yeah. Get your discourse out.
I kind of felt like I've been dreading this episode, right? And I don't want to suggest that Lysmith is, like, the root source of this episode. We knew we were going to have to do this episode at some point.
Yeah.
So we might as well do it now. I'm a very non-confrontational person at heart. And sometimes it's hard being, like, a very non-confrontational person with, like, radical political beliefs, because radical political beliefs are inherently confrontational.
I feel you so bad, yes. Yeah.
It's it tears you apart, this internal conflict. But I feel like we just got to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've got to talk about politics in your tabletop role-playing games.
Or otherwise any other art you produce, which I'm assuming I'm not saying you're never going to produce anything great that's going to be huge or big. You may one day do that. But what I am saying is I'm assuming most of the art that our listeners are going to produce is either going to be tabletop role-playing games shared between just a few people, or they're going to be fan fiction, again, just viewed by a few people, or fan art just viewed by a few people. I'm not suggesting...
Well, we're trying to, like, cater to the masses here.
Yeah.
But actually, that's relevant, but I want to, like, take, like, fiction and art and whatnot and put those aside for the moment,
just,
because initially the reason I want to make this about like tabletop role playing specifically and about other kinds of role playing is that you have like a small audience of people who are participating rather than just consuming your work.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, like, it has fundamental differences to the kinds of scenarios of those other people being your audience for a work that you've produced. But I think before we talk about politics in work, we should probably like talk about what we mean when we say that, because here's the thing, right? Literally all art is political.
There's no way to get around it. Even having something that's apolitical in its sense is still very political, because what do you view as apolitical? Do you view...
Absolutely. Like the Overton window and what it defines as safe centrist positions is going to itself define what you view as apolitical.
Yeah, like, do you view something... Like, my view on something apolitical is, okay, it's almost entirely completely inclusive, but it doesn't make any points on tackling...
No, it doesn't make any like radical statements.
Yeah, it's just everyone's fairly represented and everyone has, you know, a whatever.
But even that like
some people
John Cena-esque centrism is like still a political statement. In fact, even surrealist art that inherently rejects all coherent political statement is itself a political statement.
You know,
because like it's still saying something about like the opinions of the creator on the relevance and importance of the things it is rejecting.
Yeah, like it's just like weirdly sort of relevant to this conversation. There was something about Nintendo that popped up on my dash, and like, well, no, Nintendo, we're not political. We don't do this, and I'm like, well, Nintendo, you kind of are political. You've had a lot of themes throughout your games that haven't always been, you know, like, okay, the Gerudo in the Legend of Zelda series, they're not politically, you know, they're kind of a slightly racist depiction of like Muslim and Middle Eastern people. Let's not pretend that they're not. That doesn't
but
necessarily...
at the same time, like, aren't the Gerudo like a matriarchal culture?
Yeah, they are as well. And again,
they have a whole load of other stuff like attached to them.
And like that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't like the Gerudo. Obviously, I think the Gerudo are a fascinating part of the Zelda lore, but the fact that they're consistently portrayed as the bad guys or as the other, that's certainly a problem within the Zelda games.
Yeah,
and it's you know, like, there is a... You know, there aren't a lot of Nintendo games where you can be, you know, canonically LGBT, or, you know, like Animal Crossing does a lot to, you know, say, okay, you can be a boy villager and wear girls' clothes. There's no issue with that. You can be a girl villager and wear boy clothes. There's no issue with that. You know, clothing doesn't actually have a gender, and you can have whatever haircuts you want and stuff like that. That's all fine. But it has been pointed out, you can't really have dark skin in Animal Crossing, and for a very long time you couldn't have dark skin in Pokemon. That's a recent addition to the series. These
I
things
love
have...
how like I was trying to like ease the audience in, and you have just jumped in at the deep end.
Sorry, sorry.
All of the political problems that Nintendo has.
Yeah, sorry.
Because I mean, we can talk about that, but like we could also talk about like Japan as an ethnocentric culture.
Yeah,
exactly.
That
means that the context that these sorts of things come up in are different, and I'm like, I did not want to tackle that this early.
Yeah, absolutely. That we'll back up a bit, but the point I was getting at is saying Nintendo stuff does have its issues and stuff like that. And when they go, we're apolitical, it's like, you're not really Nintendo.
You're really not.
You're not.
Like,
you're just...
To be honest, even if all that stuff like wasn't the case, if it's the time I'm thinking of, like, that was Nintendo saying that in response to questions about same-sex marriage in Tomodachi Life.
Yeah.
And it's like, by making that statement, you are no longer apolitical, Nintendo.
Yeah.
Regardless of your prior work or anything like that.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. You know, you say, oh, I'm apolitical, there is no politics here, and I try and keep out of those issues. Well... Okay, are you though? Like, all
Not
art
really.
is you know, like
all art and all like human interaction is political, because that's what politics is. Party politics is just like a weird like higher, more abstracted level of the politics that goes on every day, like in art and in normal human interaction. So just because, like, I think you could definitely say that anything that makes explicit reference to party politics is political, and I think that's what a lot of people recognize as political. But I think most people also recognize that there are some things, like, pertaining to issues that maybe are important to their local party politicians that are themselves political, even though you can have discussions about them without ever mentioning party politics. And so from that point, I think it's easy to, like, show those people that it's like, no, everything is political. That's the point. That's so this idea of making, like, an apolitical piece of art is nonsense.
Yeah, it just doesn't exist. You know,
No.
If you got, okay, we're going to be apolitical and we're not going to include, for example, LGBT people in this, well, that in itself is a political statement.
That's a political statement.
You're pretending those people don't exist. And then if you go and you do include those messages, that is a political statement in of itself, because, okay, these people exist and we must recognise that they exist, regardless of then how you portray them in your piece of work.
You can't actually win, because this is the thing, is that people go, oh, well, you know, so what? It's a political statement if I don't include those people. And I'm like, yes, it is also a political statement if you do. There is no, or indeed, if you make, like, word of God statements that they do exist but never focus on them, that is also a political statement. There's no, like, way that you can try and, like, to be honest, even if your art is, like, the most lukewarm milquetoast bullshit that sits, like, squat in the middle of the Overton window and never makes any kind of radical statement at all, it's still political. That is still a political position.
You can't get beyond the fact that centrism, liberalism, these are still political stances to take.
Yeah.
And they're
composed of a lot of, like, issues that a lot of people don't find incredibly controversial. That doesn't mean that saying the things that they are about is not political.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
So you might. The weird thing is, you might think, like, well, okay, well, if everything is political, then where are you going with this, guys? Like, what? Surely, if everything is political, then that means that the issues that arise from, like, politics in games are unavoidable. And I'm just like, largely, yeah. But there are some things. I would say. So we've established what we mean, right?
Yeah.
By saying, like, you know, politics in games is inescapable. So maybe we should, like, now try and think about what is it that people who really object to the idea of politics in games, what do they mean when they say politics in games?
They mean, generally, they mean positions I disagree with, or stuff that makes me uncomfortable, stuff that challenges me. Because,
to be honest, like, yeah, I was going to try and be more gentle with that, but no, fuck that. That's exactly what they mean.
It is. It's oh god, someone disagrees with me. Like, I'm not, like, okay, like, I know sometimes that I do this. Maybe it's a character flaw, or maybe it's a completely reasonable thing. But I sometimes avoid stuff that I know I'm going to disagree with, because I maybe don't need that right now. And that's sometimes okay.
I feel like the major problem with that is that you disagree with is, like, an incredibly broad term.
No, yeah, exactly.
Because it's like, that encompasses everything that, like, everything that I disagree with. That is, like, everything from like, reasoned academic arguments that would challenge or at times affirm my perceptions if I, consume them and ultimately decide that whether I, like, agree with or disagree with them, right down to people who actively disagree with you vaguely making a salient point while hurling abuse at you.
I was sort of thinking more about the second one that you said, not the first one.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that when you say, stuff that I disagree with, like, that entire spectrum is included, and it's not.
No, yeah.
That's not a helpful thing, because, like, as well, it's like when we have people I disagree with, right?
Yeah.
That includes everyone from, like, you.
Yeah.
At times, very occasionally.
Yeah.
Beth and I usually do not disagree, but on some things we do.
Yeah.
To literal Nazis.
Yes. Oh,
like actual white supremacists who identify with the tenets of National Socialism.
Yeah.
And that's a ridiculously like non-useful like bracket to have.
It is, yeah.
For anybody.
Like,
because it's like, what does this mean exactly?
Yeah, like sometimes, and we don't always like this word. Sometimes when it comes to working together, there has to be a level of compromise. You have to be willing to listen to certain people. Obviously, you don't have to listen to literal Nazis, you know.
No.
But
And
even
moreover,
that, some
it's
people
like...
disagree with. You sometimes have to listen to people you disagree with so much. And it's like, no, it's fine. You can talk to people who are, you know, quite right-wing and find out that there are common grounds and commonalities that you agree with.
It's true, but at the same time, I think the most important thing is, what are you getting out of that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like... I want to say it's primarily the right that does this. I have seen people on the left do it. And
that's
it's super
fine.
fucking annoying when they do it.
That's fine, yeah.
But this idea of debate as a pissing match for debate's sake.
Yeah.
I don't think that's important or useful.
Yeah.
When you see like people on Twitter, I saw one yelling about Shappi Khorsandi, the comedian, recently, about how like she wouldn't engage and that meant that like she was afraid and shit. And it's like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Like, she has a job and children and, as she later pointed out, a cat. And it's like, people only have so much time in their lives to spend engaging with you. You didn't win the argument just because they're like, I might win this argument, but then what exactly happens? This is just a random person that I will have no further interaction with.
I like any interaction like, that you enter with someone and it's a disagreement about anything. It could be an opinion about characterization in a fanfic. It could be about serious, like, far-reaching political things. It could be about how someone sorted a fictional character, what Hogwarts house someone sorted a fictional character in. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point is, you start it by disagreeing, and then it's like, okay, you either make your point and that person goes, oh, actually, I agree with you, I'll change my position on that, and you're like, cool, awesome, I guess I've changed someone's mind today that Edward Elric belongs in Slytherin, I don't know. And cool, awesome.
Why did you give an example, Beth?
I don't know!
Now nobody's going to listen to anything more that we say.
I think he's more of a Ravenclaw, but that's beside the point. Anyway. Cool, I've changed their mind, awesome. And then you're like, then that person's going to disagree with you. So either they go, well, I'm just going to keep disagreeing with you, keep disagreeing with you, and keep disagreeing with you. And sometimes you have to kind of think, what do you want out of an interaction? Do you want that person to agree with you? Well, what's going to happen if they don't agree with you in the end? Or do you just want to humiliate that person?
And
maybe that's not the best way to handle...
And to try and bring this, like... yeah, you're right. I feel like we're getting slightly off topic here.
Yeah.
But you're correct, like that is always a consideration, and it's like human beings have only so much time to devote to activities, and the weird thing is that you sort of have to keep the argument engaging for both parties, and to some level you have to admit that the argument is always going to be more engaging for the group that wants to debate for debate's sake, because they will feel productive while they are doing that, regardless of like what they could otherwise be doing. So, as I said, it is usually the right I see doing that. I do occasionally see the left, usually brochurists, actually, as we enjoy calling them, like the very like leftists, but like super simplistic class-focused leftists.
I have to be honest with you when I see this come from an equal amount on both sides, and I think I see it a lot more from the purity politics side, and then I see it a lot from the right-wing side. But as I'm gonna very briefly cover, both of those people have a lot in common. You know,
I feel like the thing about the purity politics side, though, is that generally speaking, provided they actually believe what they're saying, that's a different thing.
No, yeah.
Because generally speaking, they don't get into debate for debate's sake, because debate for debate's sake is like inherently offensive as a concept to them.
No, yeah.
For the reason that it implies that the politics that they're talking about doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about, like, purity politics is that everything matters.
Yeah. But I've got some news for a lot of you purity I've got a news for a lot of you purity politics guys out there. The shit you argue about online, it doesn't matter. You're arguing about fictional characters and there's real people behind the computer
really
and they matter more.
Matter.
Don't send death threats online, guys.
Honestly.
It's fucking pointless.
And to be honest, like even when it does matter, it matters in a way that is fundamentally incompatible with the way that you're trying to make it matter. See, this is going to be entirely meaningless to anybody listening because we're both like hard vague talking about like a specific thing.
I know, but
and I know the specific thing because it happens to Beth and I watch it happening.
I don't want to get specific.
Like every fucking time Beth comes to me with like a thing from like this drama-filled fandom, she's like, "Hey, Alex, do you want to hear about like the new fandom drama?" And I'm like, I'm instantly 10,000 years old, but I'm sure, why not?
And it's like, and like,
it's
important to tell my friends about this because I need to get it off my chest because it is not a nice place to be. This fandom.
No,
look, if you follow me on Twitter, like, you know the fucking fandom I'm talking about. They are a fucking disgrace. Yeah, I feel like
everybody
times,
who has a
everyone's got even if you don't know the fandom, you're thinking of a fandom in your mind anywhere. It's like, oh yeah,
it's probably true of that fandom also.
Yeah, like
absolutely.
Fandom it's a very different beast than it was a few years ago. I've often said, can you imagine how fucking intolerable and horrendous the Sherlock fandom would be now? Like, yeah, they were cringy and they overanalyzed stuff and they weren't always the greatest people, you know, but God, can you fucking imagine them now? Thank God they...
Awful fandom technology has advanced in the recent years to the point where we have new and more powerful weapons.
I say it was new and more powerful weapons, but it's mostly just the same stuff dressed up in a different outfit. It's still the same.
I'm gonna be real, actually. You are entirely correct, and moreover, I feel like all of the different like component parts of fandoms were always there. Like it's just the proportions of what division of the fandom is what kind has changed drastically.
Yeah,
I feel like purity politics fandom has always existed.
Yeah, but I do think it depends on the fandom you're in, and it depends how deep they sink their claws into initially. Because if you don't read
exactly, yeah.
Like a lot of people okay, right, there's a game coming out soon, I'm really excited for it. It's that dad dating simulator, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, I know this fandom's going to be awful. Because dating sim fandoms always have and always will be awful. This is going to be even more awful because it's 2017 and fandoms in 2017 are diabolically evil. And already you see these claws sinking in it's straight people making a game about LGBT people. It's like, actually, it's not. Do your fucking research. And it's already the getting in. And you already know there's going to be people who if you romanced this dad, you were a shitbag. If you didn't romance this dad, you're a shitbag. If this daddy wasn't your favourite daddy, he was a shitbag. And like, if you like Daddy Simulator at all, you're a shitbag.
Do you know the worst thing?
What?
You missed one.
What did I miss?
You missed calling the dads daddy is appropriation of kink culture.
Oh my god, you're right, I missed that. How could I have done that? To be fair though, in the dad...
I feel like we should stop now because there's enough awful fandom without us inventing more awful fandom.
You're right, but I will say this, the daddy kink subculture, they've really calmed down in the last few years and they're not nearly as ubiquitous as they used to be, so... Honestly, those guys...
Yeah, they stopped being so angry and now they just leave weird, unwarranted comments on your Tumblr posts.
Yeah, it's like, guys...
That's not great. Please stop doing that.
I don't like that, but it's like... look, if you like getting spanked...
See, I'm actually worried about that game. I'm worried that, it's gonna be, I think you're worried that it's gonna be, Homestuck, and I'm actually worried that it's gonna be, Undertale or Welcome to Night Vale, where, that, Perfect Storm type thing, where for the first 2 months, it's great, the fandom is fantastic, and then everything goes to shit.
Yeah, no, I know what you're on about. It's like a distant memory because my current biggest fandom was immediately awful. It was alright for 2 weeks. I think that's the problem with Netflix.
I feel like a lot of people are gonna say the thing that I'm talking about, the Steven Universe fandom was also like that. I feel that's a different thing. Like, I think
actually,
the Steven Universe fandom did not fall off as high a cliff.
To be fair, I also think the Steven Universe fandom, for like most of, like, until the Stronger Than You stuff, which is where people really started being interested in the show, I think it was a fairly small fandom and they were pretty happy. And then it got really big. And then it was alright for a bit. And then I'm going to mark
which is not like
the time. I'm going to mark it around the time where the ship discourse between the Jappa shippers really the heat on them really started up. But even that wasn't that bad. And then
I don't want to interrupt you, Beth.
Yeah.
But I have just realized, Jesus fucking Christ, that if I don't mention, yes, I am aware that there has been more than one purity politics scandal in the Steven Universe fandom. Please stop writing the comment that you are no doubt writing right now.
Yeah.
I think that those were A, perfect examples of purity politics fandom being awful, but B, drastically overblown for the like actual scale.
I actually believe that as well. I don't think the Steven Universe, like, it's not as, like, it's pretty bad right now, but that's only because that's the way fandom has developed over the years. Maybe if this gave, like, it's going to be something that I think right now, when you're in the middle of it, and you're in the middle of these fandoms, and you're in the middle of the shitstorm, when you're in the eye of the cyclone, you can't really properly assess the damage, and you have to wait for a few years when all of these fandoms die down, and then you can kind of go, okay, where did this start? What was the root cause of it? And how can we prevent it again in the future? Sometimes you just have to let a disaster just do its thing, just set its course.
Fandom is the same. It will always be like this for some reason or other. This is just like new paint on an old thing.
Yeah, it's
like people in the fucking LiveJournal days still sent death threats on ship wars. They just didn't do it for purity politics reasons.
I think they did it. They did it purely because they disagreed with it. Like, there wasn't a disguise on it. It was because you didn't like the person, because you disagreed with what they were doing and stuff like that. Because you disagreed with headcanons or you didn't like their ship. It was weirdly a lot more honest. You know, it's like. So I think in a weird way that's why I kind of miss it. Like, you know, you're not getting people being called, like, abusive or condoning abuse because they ship a thing. You got people just being called, oh, this person.
That's the worst thing, right? Is that you got this like this annoying purity politics sector of fandom, but then, like, on the other side you have shit like Raylo, right, and other, like, people who are genuinely willing to overlook actual abusive dynamics in order to, like, get their rocks off or, like, ship their favorite ship. And it's like, how the fuck can we actually address purity politics fandom when the boogeymen that they are frightened of actually exist?
Yeah, but it's like...
This is so fucking annoying.
But it's like, look, to an extent, I understand where Raylo shippers come from. I understand why that dynamic is appealing to them. And I think as long as that individual themselves...
It's trash.
Is willing to address, this is, yes, I know this is problematic, but I still like to engage with this content because this is the stuff that I like reading about, or I want to explore in fan fiction what would happen if Kylo Ren got redeemed or something. And I don't think that person's a bad person for wanting to see that.
But a lot of the time it's like, but a lot of the time they're just like, oh, you know, this is the one true pairing and the one that should become canon. I'm like, A, fuck off.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, yeah.
B, those two characters have interacted maybe once violently.
Yeah.
In canon.
I know, like, I get you, yeah.
What are you on that makes you believe that is a thing that can or should happen?
But I think as well that there is this genuine fear in the Star Wars fandom that for whatever reason Lucasfilm and Disney are going to listen to Raylo shippers, and I really think they're not gonna. I
think they're not. I think they have their own thing that they're doing, and they're not going to pay attention to the way the fandom behaves. But once you've got it into your head that, like, maybe Lucasfilm will listen to loud voices, I can kind of see why, if you were, like, a teenager or something, you'd be like, oh, well, we have to be louder because otherwise this terrible thing will happen to the thing that we like.
And, like...
I do think that a lot of fandom bullshit is motivated by fear.
Yeah. I agree with you. Absolutely, 100%.
Especially, like, the purity politics stuff, because I think a lot of it is, like, sometimes motivated by, like, fear of God, what's the word? Like being made a pariah.
Yeah.
Not quite exclusion, the other thing.
Ostracization.
Expulsion.
Ostracization,
right.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, fear of that. But also sometimes, like, because that... Like, the things that... The words that purity politics fandom uses refer to things that actually happen a lot of the time and are politically relevant and sometimes important. And I think sometimes if you're a kid with, like, very little world experience and the arguments that you hear from purity politics obsessed fandom, although they're fucking stupid, have an internal logic to them.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, I understand that, which means that then I'm being dishonest if I don't, like, follow through on it. Because I understand it. And it's like, no, you can understand where they're coming from and still think it's stupid.
Yeah. And I think you can...
And that it's not important.
Like, it's fine to say, like, you know, I'm very left-wing. I consider myself very feminist. But even I can objectively look at my own side. And when I feel that they go too far or they do something or that they get violent or political in a way I disagree with, I'm able to go, I don't know if that was appropriate, that wasn't right, or you crossed a line that wasn't, like, you know, like,
everybody,
you know, like, basic, you know, like, I'm able to look at a TERF and see their rhetoric, and while I see the internal logic that's going on, I'm able to go, no, none of that makes sense because you're equating women to body parts, and that's the same thing misogynists do. Ergo, this isn't feminism. Feminism includes all women. And that includes transgender women and, you know, all different types of women of different makeups and backgrounds.
Like, throw sex workers in there as well, because a lot of TERFs have swerfs
as well. Yeah. It's like, no,
In any case, the last fucking, like, 30 minutes are probably going to be a horse of brads, because they're not...
Yeah.
They're not a relevant discussion, but they're not actually relevant to what we're talking, because we talked about fandom, right?
Yeah,
and that's not what I'm
really.
Yeah, to
like
about.
I've done the exact thing I said I wasn't going to do, and you have like 20 minutes of like bullshit that isn't going to go in.
So a long time ago, or possibly like literally 2 seconds ago, if I end up editing this that way, I was talking about what does it mean when art gets political, like in the context of a D&D group. And I think what it means is one or more people at the table are uncomfortable with the politics that is being presented.
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to disagree with it. They could be uncomfortable with it because they face this in their own life.
Sometimes that's true, and sometimes they're uncomfortable with it not because they disagree with it, but because they are worried that other people at the table will disagree with it and will, like, cause a scene about it.
Yeah. It's like, I guess recently I don't know if this issue is political. I hope we can all agree abusing children is wrong. But in the last D&D session we just did, I revealed that, you know, Eleanor, one of the main NPCs of the story, had an abusive background in her childhood. And...
Gonna be real with you, Beth, I entirely missed that.
Did you? Shit. No way.
I mean, in fairness, my character was not present in... like the scene where this would have been revealed because Asriel didn't go to see Eleanor's mum because he thinks that Eleanor's plan that involves her mum and her wife is stupid and won't work.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I was still like there to listen to this, and I did not.
I'm sorry.
Like, I got the impression that she was not a nice person.
Yeah.
I did not get the impression that she was like an actual abusive parent.
Yeah, but she was, and like, and I had to sort of go, hang on, I'm going to drop this huge bombshell, and I know that there are. You know, I don't necessarily know everybody's situation with their parents in the group. I'm just going to, and sometimes some of them I do, I'm going to go, hang on, guys, really sorry about this. There's going to be a trigger warning for child abuse, basically, and abuse of childhoods. And, you know, and I hope I handled it elegantly. I hope that it didn't come off bad in any way.
I thought so.
Yeah, like...
I mean, if this episode ever like reaches a wider audience, you're probably gonna have like a load of people who, because you use the word trigger, are gonna like try and claim like child abuse is not a big deal.
Yeah. And like, and you know, it's one of these things. I'm like, I hope I handled it elegantly, and that what Eleanor did afterwards, which she basically tried to have, like, I guess.
Oh shit! Right. Okay. Sorry. Like Eleanor's breakdown, I suppose, afterwards now makes a whole lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
That was a very confusing scene for me initially, but now I get it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay.
That definitely.
Yeah. She tried to have sex with Harrow, who is Matt's character, because the Harrow was there comforting her, and she went,
Mm.
and like I hope that people go, okay, this sort of recontextualizes a lot of Eleanor's like abusive behavior because she's basically repeating the cycle, and it's not an excuse, but it contextualizes that character a bit more, and that's what I was,
Right. And also, like later on, she drank with Cosland, didn't she?
Yeah.
Which is also like a common response to like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not correct and it's not healthy,
no.
but it's fine to represent it because that's a thing that sometimes happens. And I feel like you represented bad things arising from that coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Like that was fine. Because this is the thing, right? It doesn't. I mean, obviously it does matter because otherwise you wouldn't do it. It doesn't reflect on you.
No.
What you include in your work.
No.
What reflects on you is how you portray what you include in your work.
Yeah.
Because, right, so, I'm trying to think of like an equivalent thing that I have done. I feel like the major problem here is that a lot of my like explicitly like intentional political stuff in my campaign was A, very early on, and B, stupidly explicit.
I think
like I don't think we can really talk about the Linalesians being fascists because that was so fucking obvious.
Yeah, it was pretty on the nose. We could use a bigger writer, I guess. So George R. R. Martin, of course, he portrays a lot of misogyny in his books, but I don't think anybody would say that
doesn't mean that he co-signs that.
Yeah, like he's pretty explicit in the themes, especially surrounding women in the Game of Thrones series, about them being very powerful and trying to find that power where they can, and it's sort of a real world kind of knock on of the idea of sometimes historical women maybe haven't been at the forefront of change and stuff like that, but they've still had their own stories to tell because they've been struggling with misogyny. Like women didn't tolerate misogyny, they survived it. That's
Yeah.
And again, like I say I've been watching. I watched a few episodes and I didn't really like it, but I've been watching Sky One's.
I have
new show
literally
Jamestown.
never watched Game of Thrones, and I own like the first 3 books. I've not read them yet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to take your word.
Yeah. But like a lot of people have read the Game of Thrones books, who are generally going to be like, it doesn't revel in misogyny. It just depicts misogyny, and like that. There's a difference there. It's like how then.
I've seen like analysis that talks about how the failings of the show often revolve around seemingly missing the point of depictions of heavily misogynistically themed scenes from the books.
Yeah.
Or changing things so that scene now no longer makes sense.
In
sense of why it's there and what it's trying to portray.
It's just one of those things. Like, and I'm sure there are some people who actually know, like, the Game of Thrones books are very misogyny. Like, I don't think that makes either of us wrong. It's misogyny.
Well, I feel like a lot of those people can probably like acknowledge your position, whilst also acknowledge their position whilst also acknowledging yours. In that they can say George R. R. Martin was not trying to be like writing from a misogynist viewpoint. They might also say he did not succeed.
Yeah,
but that's a different thing.
That's
from
fine. Yeah,
this was intentional.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's just one of those things that, like, obviously I do not condone unhealthy coping mechanisms. I talk about it a lot on Twitter and Tumblr, actually, that I don't like it when people go, you're so neurotypical, Karen. And I'm like, actually, no, you need to stop having unhealthy coping mechanisms.
See, I like have a weird love-hate relationship with the pushback against that sort of thing. Because on the one hand, it is important to have healthy coping mechanisms when you are mentally ill. But a lot of the time, when I see people like using the "we can't all be neurotypical" Karen meme, a lot of the time when I see like people bringing that up, I'm like, you're focusing on this entirely through the lens of mental illness, and that is not how I initially took it. Because obviously, as an autistic person, I have to sometimes look at it through the lens of developmental disability.
Absolutely,
and sometimes no, there is no recovery or coping mechanism for this fundamental difference, and it is insulting for you to imply that there is.
No, and I understand. Like, again, this is a layered issue and stuff like that. Like it's as a dyspraxic person,
this is the thing.
There's no fix for forgetting to do shit. There's no fix for what's it called? Executive function.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's no fix for those malfunctions not working.
Well, that's a different thing,
No,
though,
yeah.
because executive dysfunction is like an actual problem that like needs to be addressed. And you're right, it can't be like fixed, but it can be addressed and worked around.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
think like both of us have problems with that. That can also arise from mental illness, and that's not really the sort of thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about stuff that's like when somebody like I'm talking about the scenarios where like somebody says a stupid thing and somebody else responds with the "we can't all be neurotypical Karen" meme, and what they mean is not "it is unreasonable for you to expect me to have healthy coping mechanisms." It is unreasonable for you to expect this behavior to be normal, or to expect it at all.
Yeah.
But it is just literally unreasonable for you to do that and serves no purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of like my irritation with the pushback against that meme has been because that's generally the context I see the meme in, because this is the thing, right? It's like it's all about your curated experience, both online and off it, like depending on who your friends are and what kind of media and social media content you consume. So definitely I feel like my experience of when and where people use that meme has been different from a lot of other people's, which is kind of why I find it difficult to connect with the pushback against it.
You know, but for me, it's always been though that like it's when you see people unhealthy coping mechanisms that are directly mean and spiteful towards other people and stuff like that, and
exactly,
and the idea of there are certain things that, you know, whether it's anxiety disorder or it's, you know, even some developmental disorders and stuff like that, to go sometimes
there's
people,
different levels of
people
shit,
can't
right?
always be there for you 100% of the time, and you have to learn to accept that
but at the same time, like, that doesn't mean that I think this is like my biggest problem is I don't feel either side is incorrect here.
And I agree with you.
It is not a good idea to basically like write off and co-sign unhealthy coping mechanisms. It is also a stupid fucking idea to expect everybody to be like on a magically perfect recovery track just automatically, and to like be belligerent against them for not being.
You know,
I think
I agree with you.
Those are extreme views, and I don't feel that either of them is correct.
It's like if you notice someone has unhealthy coping mechanisms, it's good to point out that what you're doing, especially to other people, is hurtful to you and other people, and you kind of shouldn't.
And I think
like
the other people thing is like sometimes more critical, because often I think a lot of people with unhealthy coping mechanisms know that their coping mechanisms are unhealthy. All the time, it's like it's not necessarily this thing that they somehow did not know. And sometimes they're doing the best that they can and trying to move on to like a healthier track. So I think a lot of the time when you point that stuff out, it is more helpful to point out its effect on other people. Because
you're right.
That I think is like a better a better like reason to try and like accelerate the process of like,
you know, it's like, you know, I'm talking with someone who, you know,
or I say moving to healthy recovery, or modulating your behavior if indeed recovery is not like what you're actually trying to move towards.
It's like,
as is the case maybe if you are dealing with like a developmental disability and you don't actually have a recovery goal, and indeed a recovery goal as one might quantify it for a mental illness as a concept is inherently offensive to you.
And it's
which it fucking is, and that's kind of why the pushback against that meme annoys me.
And I, you know, like it's one of these things, like, but again, you said something really important earlier. I don't necessarily disagree with either of these sides, but I don't wholly agree with them either. And sometimes that's something that comes up a lot in various things.
We're getting off topic again.
We are getting off topic again.
My point, right. Let's try again. So my point is that it is, I think, important to change the content of what you're doing based on your expectations of what the politics of your party is going to be, or of your group, right? And that doesn't mean that you should like just espouse like weak ass milquetoast centrism all the time and never challenge like the political preconceptions of your group. But you have to pay attention to the fact that the people in your tabletop role-playing game are active participants in the content that you're vending to them. They're not an audience who will then like go and have a private opinion on how you conveyed your message. They have the capacity to change what is happening, and you have to be aware of that.
And I think if anything, I think that's a good thing for you as an artist.
It's absolutely
a good thing for you as a person. I would always hope, if I didn't handle the topic correctly, if somebody felt I did something, and I would probably always do this completely ignorantly. I want to state that. But I mean, even that's not good enough for some people, but off-topic conversation. But
it depends on what context the subject of the ignorance comes up.
No,
in,
yeah,
right?
but it's
like there are going to be some people who think you're the worst person ever for ever making a mistake, but there's also going to be like you should still be told.
No, yeah,
right?
but that's what I'm on about. I would always hope that if I did something, probably in ignorance, let's be honest, that was racist or even homophobic. It does happen. Even if you're queer, sometimes you do things that are homophobic or transphobic. Or even misogynistic. It happens, even if you're a lady. Sometimes you're misogynistic.
I'm going to bring up anti-Semitic because that one is, on occasion, a minefield, and I do appreciate people bringing up the web of anti-Semitic pitfalls that centuries of anti-Jewish media have woven for people to step into. I appreciate being educated about that.
Yeah, I had no idea at all that green skin on witches and stuff like that was anti-Semitic. I was like, that's a completely fine thing. That's just how witches look sometimes, and it's kind of a cool look. And then I read a blog post that was like, actually, that's anti-Semitic, and here are the reasons why. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I guess
I also
it is.
read a blog post that was like, don't be excising all of these qualities from literally everything in your work, because yes, they're all anti-Semitic dog whistles, but they're so quiet that you have to have more than one of them before they actually make a thing. Yeah. It's like green skin on its own isn't anti-Semitic.
Bad,
large noses on themselves are not anti-Semitic, but when you start combining them, then it's like, oh, maybe this is like...
In reference, this was to a popular fan depiction of a character who was only heard in audio form.
Exactly, right.
And
I should be clear also that this is entirely secondhand information, because neither of us are Jewish, and it is not our place to say what is and isn't anti-Semitic. So if you are a Jewish listener and you disagree with the things that we are saying, you are perfectly within your rights to say that you disagree with them and why, and we will probably listen to you, because that also is information that we should listen to other people on. Specifically the people affected.
This particular character, sometimes, the character itself, he's quite greedy for money. He's quite greedy for he'll lie about the loot he gets and stuff like that. He's not a wholly honest person. He's not a bad character.
So this is the thing I was saying is when those qualities stack up, that's when you have a problem.
And he's often depicted as having a big nose. He's a wizard to start. We all know the character I'm talking about. And some fans depict him as green. Some fans depict him as green. And all of those combination of things together go, hang on a minute. And we love this character. We don't think that he's bad for having these qualities. This is why we love this character. But all those things together, that's maybe not the right thing to do. And it's important that that's the thing. And recently, this audio formatted show is going to be made into a graphic novel, and they posted some artwork of it, and they did go with the fan interpretation of this character is green, although he's more of a teal blue. And someone went, we don't know if you know this, but this is anti-Semitic. And of course, the content creators of this piece of media, as wonderful as they are, went, shit, we didn't know. Okay, let's go and discuss this.
Those specific content creators were also called up, and it's like, hey, we're kind of disappointed that you're not representing this character as being see, I know the correct term here, but I don't actually know how to pronounce it.
Latinx, I believe.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Now, I don't know about
at that point, the character creators said, no, we're not going to do that, because I mean, it's cool that you want to see that kind of representation. That would actually be a terrible idea, because other unrelated facts about this character, when combined with that sort of revelation about his ethnicity, would turn him into an unpleasantly racist character.
Yeah, and I went, And even I went, yeah, and I think obviously if you are a Latinx fan of this character and you want to go with that presentation of him, that's completely fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because your ethnicity changes the contextualization of your headcanon for this character 100%. Absolutely. But for a white person to do that, and also
right.
And also for Latinx people to go, actually, I kind of do agree. I do think that is racist. That's okay.
And I'm glad that they did not do that for the reasons that they said. That's fine.
They've went the route down making him a sun elf and going back to the source material going, okay, he's a sun elf and he's dark.
I think it's really funny that we're still talking euphemistically, even though at this point, like, being that we are, a tabletop role-playing, tabletop role-playing podcast talking to an audience who are, like, often big D&D fans, pretty much everybody knows who we're talking about. The
Adventure Zone. We know we're talking about Taco at this point. And I went euphemistically because I wanted to. I don't know why we're keeping it so vague sometimes, and I think it's because we don't want to step on anyone's toes about having some.
Well, I did tell you before we started recording to, like, try and keep it general.
Yeah.
I didn't actually mean be this vague, but...
No, yeah. I've been too vague.
There are, like, specific recent events that we could be talking about that we could, like, kid ourselves are actually relevant to this topic when really they're not. No. They're, like, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon away from this topic, and I don't want to talk about them.
No, I don't
really.
Because
I feel like we're almost an hour into the recording already, and we've already been off on 2 massive tangents, and I feel that would just be terrible.
I know. Anyway, but it's one of these things where it's like, if you listen to, like, I know that especially in my game as well, especially with the nomad culture, it covers so many broad topics of differing things about, I mean, I made it pretty clear that, Azrael is a survivor of a genocide, like, pretty early on in the game, didn't I? Like,
you did. I feel like I also had, like, a say in that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, absolutely. And I went...
yeah.
And that's a really...
I think we worked that out together.
That's a really fucking heavy thing for a character to go on. And also, to put that so plainly in the fiction and going, yeah, there have, people have been horrible to other people because they're from a culture that they disagree with, because they don't look the way that they want them to. And, I've tackled other things, like, they've had their history and culture whitewashed a bit, and important stuff they've done erased from history, which we'll probably get into in other sessions later on. And as well, that it's a very strong analogy not only for how, Native Americans and Aboriginal Australians have been treated, but it's also there's a lot of heavy, like, contrast to be drawn to the Romani culture and to Jewish culture, and they're all really difficult.
You try your best,
and
right?
I do try my best. I don't always handle it elegantly.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because I feel like one of the good things about being a DM running your own world with this, like, small... And I have a vague feeling that I've mentioned this before in, like, a different context.
Yeah.
Maybe in Playing Outside Yourself, which has some overlap with this episode,
yeah.
is when you're a DM in, like, a game of D&D or whatever, your audience is very small and can give immediate feedback.
Yeah, and that's brilliant, yeah.
They're often your friends.
Yeah.
And they can like... Rather than, like, it's not the same relationship as when you're, like, an author who releases, like, a book or something, and your book has some sort of, like, unintentional rather, political faux pas in it that will, in the way that art does, have some sort of widespread effect that the people who are then upset with you in your audience can't close Pandora's box. They can't put the cat back in the bag. So a lot of the time they're just sort of impotently angry at you. And you change your ways, but then the damage is done. Whereas here, it's like, all the people who will ever be affected by this version of your work, if you decide that they are correct when they call you out and that you want to change that, are here. Like, it's literally... I mean, I suppose it's kind of different if you're, like, broadcasting it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even then, like, you'd have to be... If it's a real serious problem, you'd have to be broadcasting it live before you can't take it back.
Yeah.
Because... Otherwise, it's like, all right, well, don't post the episode or cut that bit out.
Yeah.
You can still edit it.
Yeah, like,
it's fine.
Yeah, it's one of these things where you're able to give instantaneous sort of feedback. And you mentioned live, so it was very interesting. I follow Adam Coble, but he was talking about it can be very difficult sometimes when you do the live shows, because of course sometimes you get a group of your friends, and jokes that would be okay together. Or you could, like, if somebody wants to do, like, an offensive gay man stereotype, for example, you can go, come on, that's not appropriate at the table. Or dial it down a bit, or come on, this makes me uncomfortable, and maybe you should find another way around it. When it's live, it's like there and it's done, and you've upset people. And
I can imagine that, like, that would also be a problem if, I was going to say, basically, if you do exactly what we did, you have, because I edit House of Bards fairly heavily, right?
Yeah.
It is always me doing the editing. Beth has expressed some interest in doing, like, editing for another podcast if we did another, and has a number of cool podcast ideas that I do not have time to do.
No, yes. No. We eventually, maybe one day we'd get them off the ground, but yeah.
Yeah. But, like, definitely, if we fuck up during recording, which, generally speaking, we do not, I can edit that out, and I will edit that out if it's, like, something particularly egregious. And if you'd never heard that and you thought that we were perfect, which you don't, not only because that's a stupid thing to think about people like us, but also because sometimes I'm just so tired when I'm editing, I'm like, whatever, render it and push it.
Yeah.
And I forget to remove something that I would have liked to remove. Then if you saw, like, the Game of Bards, which was streamed live on Twitch and was therefore, like, this is not a dress rehearsal, this is the actual live thing.
Yeah.
I did actually make one edit to the upload of Game of Bards.
Oh, did you?
Because
what was it?
It's when I forget that my screen is what the people on the stream can see, and I go and look up the accompanying, like, because you mentioned a book cover.
Yeah.
I feel like you will remember the book, the specific book cover that you were talking about. It was an erotica book cover.
Oh, right.
Very famous for the imagery portrayed,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to post that in the chat to give the chat the idea of what it was that we were talking about, and I forgot that the chat could see me Googling that. So they got not only the image that I wanted to show them, but a bunch of other images of a similar description that were less funny and perhaps more, don't broadcast this.
Oh dear, I had no idea you'd done that, obviously, because I wasn't...
Right, because it was all silent, right?
Yeah.
It was just me, like, talking at the time. So, in the actual upload, that's replaced with, like, the title card for, like, 2 seconds.
I had no idea we'd put that. Oh gosh, I don't know if we. Maybe this should be the, like, sins of the podcasters.
I mean, that wouldn't happen now because I actually have 2 monitors now, so I would just, like, do it on the other.
Yeah,
monitor,
I mean, like,
but,
I've I'm sure I can't remember all this. I'm sure I've said stuff, and you've went, hang on, Beth, that's not right. And I've went, oh shit, yeah, I didn't realise what I just said was incredibly xenophobic. I can't always help it. I'm British, you grew up with it. These are just attitudes you get. Sometimes your opinions about people from other countries, they're not always nice, even though you don't really believe them.
And a lot of the time, like, those opinions, you can start weeding them out, but you need to be called up on them the first time.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point I was trying to make is that I don't think this did happen, but, like, if you'd only experienced a group of people through curated experiences, then you get to see all their, like, expulsions of intrusive thoughts and stuff when you see them live. And I think you have to go into, like, a live event with a different kind of expectation, because people are not perfect, and when a person like that fucks up, what is important is not the fuck up. What is important is what they then do.
I mean, I think it's
because the whole reason that you might think that we are perfect from, and again, you won't, but the whole reason that you might think that somebody like us is perfect from hearing that curated experience is because those people made those kinds of expulsions and then removed them from the final thing because they're like, that's not me. That doesn't actually reflect what I actually believe.
Yeah.
That is a mistake that I made, and there's no reason to propagate that to my audience.
Yeah. I think it's and I mean, like, sometimes, I think this is why we would probably have to edit this out. This is going to be a tangent. Why certain YouTubers do really, really well, because they maybe edit out their worst moments and they go, oh, I can't really say that on camera, can I? No, that's not appropriate. And then eventually they get too comfy, and then either in a live debate or a live stream, shall we say, they do something. And it becomes pretty...
You're being, like, real subtle here, Beth.
And it becomes kind of infamous. And...
Now, in fairness... Many of those people might have been showing some sort of, like, indication that something was not correct long before something bad happens in, like, a live debate or a live stream. But
those people when the two people we're vaguing at did the thing that they did, a lot of people, including myself, would went, these two people have been shitbags for ages. You've only just noticed it now because it's been unedited and because it's been in the context of not a joke, or if it has been a joke, it's been a joke too far that they've pushed.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the time it's like, it would be really weird if this were a joke because the context makes no sense for it to be a joke.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things again.
I think also, this is, I suppose, like a happier thing because it's sort of vaguely interesting. When television first appeared, right? So when like voiced, not television. I'm not thinking the talkies.
Yeah.
Right. The films but with sound. When those first appeared, there was this huge industry shift in film because a lot of the there were people who had worked in radio and there were people who had worked on silent films who couldn't make the transition to film to talkies to films with sound because they had entirely the wrong voice or because they didn't look correct for film.
Yeah.
And I feel like, without trying to imply that one is a medium progression from the other, because I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a lot of YouTubers who have tried to since the popularity boom of game streaming and also like other kinds of streaming, have tried to make the jump to being streamers and have failed because most of their strengths lie in carefully curated video content. And
some of those have succeeded and have done really well.
Absolutely.
To the point where they've completely abandoned their YouTube because it's like, oh, this is a way better for me. I mean,
please come back to us, Star.
You have, and I think, and I think in a lot of ways it's why I think a lot of gaming YouTube has moved over to Twitch, because Twitch is such a better platform for gaming in a way. Because there are problems with how YouTube runs its business.
I feel again it depends on what exactly it is that you're trying to showcase. Like, obviously you wouldn't stream like a tutorial video.
No.
I'd prefer that you didn't make a tutorial video and just wrote down your tutorial, but that's because tutorial videos annoy the piss out of me.
I agree so much.
Well, that's not true, actually. Tutorial videos are an important resource. What annoys me is when a company or group takes the policy that all of their tutorial content, and indeed help content in general, is going to be presented in video form.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck off.
It's also, especially when
I don't want to watch a 20-minute video for something that I could read literally 3 lines of text to understand.
It's also really bad when it's presented like, hey, it's your boy, Grimy. I'm here to show you how to solve this
show me
puzzle.
How to make this error go away. Unity's like that. Like, occasionally I do I fuck around with Unity, like trying to get like a prototype of game development together. Literally all of their help documentation is in video form, and it's so annoying.
It's your boy. I'm like,
no, not that kind.
I know, but I know what you're on about as well, though.
Drag the thing to the timeline, and I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
Please stop.
Just type it, and sometimes videos are useful, Generally, I think if I want to watch something about cooking, I would prefer a video tutorial on it because...
Right, I think a video tutorial is helpful for anything that requires a visual element that moves quickly.
Yeah. Because
then stuff like screenshots is not particularly helpful.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Where, have been times when I've been trying to do a thing in a game and I look up a walkthrough and the walkthrough makes no sense, and then I look up a walkthrough with screenshots and the screenshots don't look anything like what I'm looking at. And then I look up a video, and I'm like, oh, okay, you get to where it looks like the screenshot by doing this that I didn't know how to do.
Yeah. No, That was a true tangent.
It was, but I felt okay about
that.
Yeah,
yeah, I feel okay about that one.
That's the thing that's annoyed me for a while. So our group, I guess, we should maybe talk about our group so we can explain kind of what the point is here. I'm trying to think, how many queer people are in our group?
Okay, well, there's me.
I feel like it's either all but one or all but two, depending on what your definition of a queer person is. I would say all but one.
I would say all but one.
We may disagree.
I would say all but one. I actually do not differ on that opinion.
Well, I say that, but also I don't actually know about that one. Like he's never been.
No, he's never been upfront about it, and
And it's not really our place to ask,
No.
because when is it going to be relevant except for literally this exact thing we are talking about now?
And, or, I don't know, like, yeah, no, it's just this conversation.
Yeah,
so that's literally all it's relevant at. But
Yeah,
I would say,
so-
for the most part, we're all pretty... Either we are clued in with it and we've no problem with it and we are in support of it, or we ain't.
We should be. I
we
guess
are.
like again, this is a weird thing that would not be relevant in any other context. But the one person that we're talking about is in a relationship with one of the other people in the group.
Yeah.
So it's not as if he's like the weird odd one out that we've
He's
got to
not-
like temper all our politics
he's
for.
He's not straight Steve in the gay sitcom. He's
I mean,
he's fully
in theory he might be, but like
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
he's not straight Steve as the original straight Steve post would have it, where he'd like, there's no real reason why he should be hanging out with these people, but it's like, I like monster trucks, and like, aha, straight Steve, you're so funny and straight. It's like, no, that's not. That is not the thing.
No. It's
the point being, right? Also, like, how many of us are disabled? I feel like in terms of, like, as long as we, like, sweep the net pretty far for disability, I think all of us.
I think so.
Like, if we include mental illness as well, I'm
Oh
pretty
yeah,
sure that's all of us.
that's all of us then.
Right. So we've got like this group of disabled queer people, by and large, like a significant number of whom are like radical leftists.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making here is that you get an idea of what kind of content one would expect a DM to be able to get away with, and what kind of, like, not even content, like any kind of content would theoretically be fine, with a few exceptions, but even they like kind of fall into this thing where it's like, it's the portrayal, right?
Yeah.
You have some expectations going into our group about what the portrayal should be, and I suppose, though it pains me to think of like, you know, like NRA supporters or whatever having fun with our hobby.
Yeah.
I imagine that if you had like a group of like of them, they would also have opposing but like similarly framed expectations about what sort of content and portrayal they wanted from their DM.
Yeah. And I mean, it would be nice to see them not getting that. That would be pretty funny. I would like to see how that game went down, but I kind of feel
But if their DM also was like from their like friend group, we don't really have any control over whether they get that. And at that point, like, they would have an expectation about what sort of. I mean, it would probably be, if it's specifically the NRA. I mean, it would probably be like a setting or a system that allowed firearms.
Yeah.
To start with.
I mean,
and easy access to them.
I mean, it's not like I would say it's not like we as a group necessarily. I mean, I know at least one of us has an opinion of guns are somewhat necessary, and I'm like, but dude, America takes it too far. Though, like, you know, but that's
that's the thing though. It's like you will have an impression from your group about what sort of political background is going to be non-controversial with them. And that doesn't mean that you should always stick to that, but it does mean that you should use that as like the fundament of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You should be like, okay, that's the basis, and now that I have that as the basis, I can use my deviations from that intentionally to challenge things or to make interesting content. Like, sometimes as well, there's just things that you don't include because sometimes it's a fantasy and you're like, I don't want to address this thing specifically, and it makes me happy to not have it. Like, I don't think, like, this may be a slight retcon from like the later game.
Yeah.
I don't think that my world has heterosexism. Really, I don't. There are a number of nations that are portrayed as bad nations where bad people live, and also they have bad governments. But generally speaking, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't have like heterosexual essentialism. That's not a thing.
But but I would take a different way of portraying that, don't I? I do say in parts of the world, yes, it is different.
Yeah, like you definitely have stories where we fight against homophobia.
Yeah, and I mean there was one particular one where like someone was the victim of transphobia, and I went, but like this isn't. But I also kind of would go, but this isn't like a widespread thing for this particular part of the world. Like this
Right.
is definitely an awful thing to do with someone, and it is viewed as an awful thing to do with someone just because they're a transgender person.
Yeah, and it's like, it's entirely up to you what. Don't feel that you have to include an explicit political theme.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've already talked about how sometimes, because of the world that you live in and also like your upbringing and your environmental context and all sorts of stuff like that, you will accidentally make a piece of artwork with a particular political theme. Like, that is going to happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to explicitly make every political theme that you agree or disagree with, especially if you don't actually want the work to be about that at all.
Yeah.
Like, I did not include heterosexism because heterosexism is fucking exhausting in real life, and I did not want to, like, write interactive stories where it is addressed. I'm just like, I'm just going to make this not a thing.
Yeah, and, like...
So,
yeah.
like, you found, as the example, because we've already established, Alex does not include a lot of queer people in his games, largely because Alex does not include a lot of people in relationships in his games.
Whereas...
But you had Antonia and Felicity.
Yeah.
Antonia and Felicity are not powerful people. They are heavily oppressed. Like, Antonia had a horrible job where she had to, like, murder and butcher other people. And she could not leave or go to the authorities or anything because she was, like, controlled by her employer. And she is a queer person, and there is nothing weird or, like...
Yeah.
The text does not, like, condemn her for that.
Yeah.
Neither does the text, like, promote her in the face of adversity for that.
Yeah, but, so like, Jay is in a relationship with Marion. Jay is also agender and intersex, but has never faced any shit for that in Dawn Somber. It's just... these are just things about Jay.
I was, like... With one exception, I don't think I've ever felt the need to include that kind of content, either pertaining to gender or even just gender roles. And I've just naturally made, like, even non-sympathetic characters, like, switch into the correct sorts of pronouns, just because I'm like, I don't want this to be a point of contention in my world.
Yeah.
Like, I have other what's the word I'm looking for? I have other conflicts, that are not this.
Yeah.
And the more I don't have to focus on this, like, the more I think it strengthens the conflicts that I do want to focus on.
But
the one exception would be that I remember during the garden party, originally at least, one of the key conflicts that the Athtone siblings have is that they have what I suppose we would see as gender role non-conforming aspirations. Like, Gale basically, like, wants to join the Rangers, who are, like, kind of like the TA, I guess.
Yeah.
And her brother likes cooking and childcare.
Yeah.
And their dad does not approve of this at all.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like,
and
they're nobles, so I'm not, like, portraying that as being normal. And also, I've downplayed that in more, like, more recent versions of the of the scenario, because I don't want that to be a point. I don't want that to be a thing.
But I think I take a different route where, yes, this oppression does happen and there are hateful homophobic people in the world, but I still make the point of going, but, like, LGBT people still exist and they still thrive and they're still here and they are defiant and they're still around because you can't stop them. You know what I mean? Like, it's the...
Yeah.
It's the sort of a flip side of that. Like, it's exhausting when you enter a fictional realm, shall we say, and it's like, oh yeah, dragons and magic exist. Oh, also, by the way, so does homophobia. Also, you're never going to meet a single gay character except to discuss homophobia. And it's like, that's... you know what I mean? Like,
we should be clear, like, with the exception of what Beth just said, like, neither of the methodologies that we described is wrong.
No. Like...
You are entirely, like... The route that I went with is I deal with this particular aspect of, like, political unpleasantness in real life, and I don't want it in my fantasy, especially because I don't want to address it with the narrative.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to remove it entirely. Yeah. And Beth's was, I deal with this particular aspect of political unpleasantness in real life, so I'm going to portray it in my fantasy being defeated.
Yeah. Like
neither of those is wrong to do.
Yeah, like, it's one of these things that it's like, there's two where, like, it's even when you depict a person, right? It's I guess what is sort of the BioWare sometimes method versus the Fallout always method, isn't it? Like, there will be a bisexual character and maybe a Dragon Age game will go and they're bisexual and here they are discussing it and how they've been treated throughout their life. Or here's Dorian, he's gay and he faced oppression because of it. And then versus going to Fallout Bethesda, and everyone's bi and it doesn't really matter and no one really cares. Neither of those is wrong.
That's the case in Skyrim as well.
Yeah.
Like, Bethesda, I think, like, Bethesda basically did it because Bethesda wants to allow its players the choice of, like, having romantic entanglements with certain characters, but also does not want to write that at all.
Yeah.
So it's just easier to make every romanceable character bisexual because then you don't, like, run into the problem of people being upset that their waifu is not interested in them.
Yeah. Whereas...
And, like, for the amount of actual content in a Bethesda game romance, like, that's fine.
Yeah, and
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and
but it does create this sort of weird, I say weird, like fine, absolutely fine, setting where this is not a problem at all. I would say the only real problem begins to occur when you start juxtaposing that kind of mechanical allowance with the other kind of narrative portrayal.
Yeah.
When you have, like, everybody is bisexual, like, well, not everybody, but everybody that you can have a relationship with is bisexual and does not have, like, a problem with you or your sexuality or your appearance. But this is a deeply homophobic society.
Yeah, that's like...
Which, as portrayed by other aspects of the narrative, and that doesn't really make a huge amount of sense.
Yeah. But, like, you know, then you versus over a Dragon Age, and it's like, these characters are, like, massively, like, these characters have all had differences in how they've grown up, and some of them have been treated differently because of their sexuality, and some of them haven't, and have faced very little, you know, like, some don't bring it up ever, some bring it up a bit, some it's, like, a big bit of their story, and some, it's not an issue. And, like... Which is how it is in real life.
It's
how it is in real life.
If you want to tell, like, stories about that, then, obviously, that's the way to go.
But, like...
Whereas, if you want to tell stories that aren't about that, but include that content... The Bethesda way is probably the way to go.